Yo, so in case y'all didn't know this already, I watch a lot of YouTube. I have ever since I was a kid. I don't really like TV, I don't have the attention span for movies, but YouTube, that's where I'm at. And obviously I like anime, and I like YouTube, so I would obviously like anime YouTubers, kinda. I say kinda because, in my opinion, most AniTubers are just kinda boring, because a lot of them are too afraid to give their real opinions and rather just pander to the audience, or will avoid giving opinions at all, which I think is kinda lame. And that led me to making my own channel because I enjoy the genuine conversation and arguments that people have. I think it's fun to sit down and argue about stupid shit. I find it fun. And anime YouTube has blown up in recent years, but I still don't think there's anyone on anime YouTube that is better than RDC World 1. And one thing RDC does better than anyone is argue. Like, if you ever seen videos of these niggas, they will argue about anything, which I love because I'm the exact same way. I'll argue about anything too, which is why I love their back and forth series, because all they do is argue on that I've seen like every episode, but on the most recent one, the main argument they got into was Attack on Titan versus Dragon Ball Z. Well, it was the main one to me because it was the one I was the most interested in. You know, with Attack on Titan coming to an end, a lot of people are trying to decide where they're gonna put it with their favorite anime. And in recent times, it has risen a lot in a lot of people's ranking. I'm not part of this conversation because Attack on Titan been in my top 5 since season 3. When Levi was fighting Kenny, when we found out all about the government and all the hidden shit that was going on in the Attack on Titan world, that's when that shit hit top 5. But after this ending, I've seen a lot of people overreacting with it. Like, I've seen more than one person say that Attack on Titan is objectively the best anime of all time and shit like that. Calm down. Relax. And through this talk about Attack on Titan and Dragon Ball Z, it started this more broad discussion about nostalgia and recency bias and how that clouds people's judgment on series. And while I think a lot of it comes from what you value in a show, I think some of it has to be insecurity. Personally, I love older shonen like One Piece and Bleach. Shit, I still think One Piece is better than all the new shit that's out right now. But I'd say every once in a while, maybe every 10, 15 years, there comes around a new anime that shifts around what people think is acceptable to have in your top 5 or top 10 or top 3, and this time it just happens to be Attack on Titan. And I think when this happens, fans of those older series start to get a bit insecure, and I've noticed that the older the anime and the bigger the fan base, the more insecure they get. And being a One Piece fan, I've noticed a lot of people in the community do a very similar thing, where they try to put down and downplay a lot of the newer shows coming out in order to prop One Piece up. But I don't think any fan base exemplifies this more than Dragon Ball fans. Like, Dragon Ball fans cannot conceptualize the idea that any anime could possibly surpass Dragon Ball, and they'll ignore any arguments to the contrary. And it just feels weird that out of any show, Dragon Ball is the one to have this conversation, because out of any show, Dragon Ball kind of has the least ground to stand on, outside of popularity. I mean, I like Dragon Ball, but it's just Dragon Ball, you know what I mean? I feel like if we were bringing up old shows, Yu Yu Hakusho is more reasonable to bring up than Dragon Ball. Because to me, Attack on Titan and Dragon Ball Z just aren't even close. But to be honest, I don't even put Dragon Ball Z in rankings at all anymore. Like, if you ask me to rank anime, I wouldn't put Dragon Ball Z in there positively or negatively. Dragon Ball just feels like it's in this weird realm of its own. Cause like I said, it's just Dragon Ball. Not that I couldn't rank Dragon Ball, but I would be honest. I like Dragon Ball, but I'm gonna be honest about what Dragon Ball is. And it's hard because I try to be reasonable, but it feels like for other people, Dragon Ball gets this leeway that no other series gets. And what I mean by leeway is that Dragon Ball gets away with making dumbass plot decisions, abandoning characters, and just generally doing things that no other series would get away with. Other series would get dropped if they did the things Dragon Ball did. Like, could you imagine if Jujutsu Kaisen pulled some shit like how Dragon Ball did with the Namekian Dragon Balls? Imagine if in Bleach they introduced a way where you could just bring anybody back to life with no consequences anytime you want, an infinite number of times. Or imagine if that shit was in Naruto. Nigga, they would have been on Kishimoto ass. Because it's Dragon Ball, we kinda gotta let it slide. And it's not like that's the only thing. There's plenty of things in Dragon Ball that are like that either actively make the story worse or just don't go anywhere and feel pointless. Just things that other anime would get crucified for. I say it's because of nostalgia, but it might not be nostalgia. It might just be because Dragon Ball fans will accept anything. Akira Toriyama could pull up to a Dragon Ball fan's house, spit in their face, smack them 3 times, and they'll smile and say, "Thank you, Akira Toriyama. Thank you for smacking me in the face." But on the flip side, one mistake that I see people make, and that RDC made in that video, is they overstate the issues with things like pacing and animation in older anime. And coming from someone who's watched One Piece and has recently rewatched all all of East Blue, the pacing is not nearly as much of a detractor as people like to make it seem. Like, yeah, it can be annoying sometimes, but I feel like it's always manageable. And sometimes slowing down the pacing just helps with the tension. And it's weird because things that were once valid criticisms, like the pacing, start to become overstated over time. And this is where the recency bias comes into play. Because people praise these newer shows for their quickened pacing. Like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man, people are always like, oh, I love how they get the ball rolling and they never stop. They just keep going. And then they turn around and complain about characters feeling flat or underdeveloped, or their relationships not feeling real enough, or their relationship not feeling strong enough. And they complain about these things without realizing that how quick the pacing is the exact reason for these issues existing. My favorite example of this in JJK is Megumi, because I constantly see complaints about him and how he doesn't even feel like a deuteragonist because he feels underdeveloped. But it's like, when you look at the story, when did he ever have time to even get developed? Because of how much pressure is on the story to constantly have something be happening all the time, some things just get lost, I think. And that's why I think recently we've been seeing these dumbass takes of people saying Jujutsu Kaisen is all fights and no plot. What the fuck? If you think that, you're just not paying attention to what's going on and you're completely lost. But I think that's partially Jujutsu Kaisen's fault. Because of how the story is paced and how things are written out, it makes it really easy for people to miss things, to the point where all they really remember is the fights. So then you only get people picking up on the hype and the fights and the good animation, and they use that to try to push it above the older shows. And this is one of those things where recency bias plays a part, because older shows had hype moments and good animation too. There's this major misconception that we have now that older shows were just all bad animation. Everybody was moving like a fucking cardboard cutout in that bitch. But that's not how it was. Like, of course, back then it was all hand-drawn animation, so it was harder to be consistent. So there's way more mistakes back then than there is now. But older anime still have some beautifully animated sections. Like I said, I recently rewatched all of East Blue and I was actually surprised. Like, I'm watching these older One Piece episodes and I'm only on like episode 15 or something, and it's like, damn, some of these sequences are actually so well animated. But if you listen to Twitter, you'll think they're moving like Terrence and Phillip in that bitch. With all that being said, I would still say on average, newer anime do tend to be better. Recency bias is a real problem that we have in the anime community that I'm noticing crop up even more and more, but at some point we do have to accept reality. It's just how things go, it's natural. As time goes on, things evolve and get better. Of course the stories are going to get better over time because newer authors are going to learn from past authors' mistakes. Along the way, old things get surpassed by newer things, and one of those things just happens to be Dragon Ball. But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know if you prefer newer anime or older anime in the comments below. Like the video if you liked the video. I know you liked the video, because why would you still be watching if you didn't like the video? Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, man, I'm gone.
Damn, I can't forget about them late nights. I'm stuck in the mix, I can't shake right. We coming with Bleach, we gon' play fight. We look foolish, we blind on my like a can. I stay out the mix, I can't fuck with you. You going for shit, need to fix up these things.